Baker Mayfield. He put himself in a situation that necessarily didn't have to be this, be this way. But we're here now. So what is Baker Mayfield going to do? Baker Mayfield has the atmosphere in Tampa Bay a little uncomfortable. For everybody, it's how it is. And it's not because of them. It's because of Baker Mayfield. He probably can't see it. He can't probably feel the energy that he's carrying around because he's unhappy. He doesn't feel appreciated. And chat, y'all help me out with this. Y'all let me know what defines a franchise quarterback before we get started in this segment. What defines a franchise quarterback? And do you consider Baker Mayfield what you define as a franchise quarterback? Y'all talk to me in the chat because we're going to have a little Q&A with this right here. You know what I mean? And let me tell you, seeing all the players sign new contracts, it has to make me think. Did Baker Mayfield make the right decision to end negotiations with the team once training camp began? They cut negotiations exactly when training camp began. And that was because Baker Mayfield decided to handle the situation that way. Every year, a few weeks into training camp, teams strike deals with players. Of course, the first offer is going to be a low-ball offer. That's why it's called negotiating, right? You have to understand this is a business. Baker Mayfield have to understand this is a business that has protocol in place for how they want to handle things like contracts when they do the contract negotiations or contract extensions. You only make the type of demand Baker Mayfield demanded if you're coming off a Super Bowl victory or maybe even a Super Bowl appearance, to say the least. You can't come in and swinging your tail left and right because you won a few games. You're the division champion. You had a subpar amount of production. That doesn't hold no weight to $1 billion NFL team. They want the Super Bowl. You understand? Now, Baker Mayfield has put all the pressure on himself to perform at a level that shows he deserves a fair market value contract. He put the pressure on himself now. Baker Mayfield should be signing the deal along with other players during training camp right now. You got Bijan Robinson, Jamari Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, Zay Flower. Should be Baker Mayfield next. He should be signing a new deal, right along with everyone else. And if he already had the deal done, then that puts the pressure back on the team. He doesn't need to be putting the pressure on himself. Now he needs to first stay healthy, second perform at levels that convinces Tampa Bay to franchise him and work something out, or play well enough another team think he qualifies to be their quarterback. That's the pressure Baker Mayfield put on himself. Tension between Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers continue to grow. Things between Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers aren't getting better. Since Mayfield announced last week how disappointed he was with the latest contract offer, things have continued to get worse between the two parties. Mayfield cut off communication with the team when the team's training camp began. According to reports, he doesn't look happy. Of course he's not happy because he thinks he's a franchise quarterback. ESPN Adam Schefter describes what the atmosphere had been like for Mayfield at Bucs camp. Mayfield is within his right to say, I don't like this offer. But to call the offer disrespectful, we have to judge for ourselves. So you judge for yourself. Schefter said, per Joe Buck fan, the Bucs essentially offered a 2-year extension averaging over $50 million a year. And the total money in the 3 years would have put him in the top 5 quarterbacks in the game. But I don't think he liked the length of the deal. I don't think he liked that it was a 2-year extension and that would contractually tie him to 3 years. The money is his. I guess I'm sorry. It's supposed to say it's a typo there. The money in his mind was off, and he felt disrespected. Man, Baker Mayfield. We know Baker Mayfield is one of those guys that is full of ego, right? He's one of those guys that thinks he's accomplished more than what he's accomplished. He thinks he's a better player than he actually is. We all probably do. You know, I'm not just saying Baker Mayfield. We all probably do, especially when it comes to contract times, you know, in contract negotiation. But Baker Mayfield needs to drop his ego right now and tell his agent to contact that team and ask them to continue to trade proposals, continue negotiations. And if he needs to apologize for doing bad business, then make it happen, because this ain't it. Baker Mayfield should be signing a deal as we speak. Teams aren't too fond of negotiating new contracts during the season. You very, very rarely see teams strike deals during the season. Hint, the reason they make sure players they want around get deals done during training camp. That's the nature of the game. It's not really done before training camp or at the deadline before training camp starts, like Baker Mayfield requested. Now he has some big kahunas if he demanded them get something done before we start training camp. And like I said, he hasn't won a Super Bowl, won a playoff game, or at least made a Super Bowl appearance. That's the only way I see a player of Baker Mayfield age make a demand that way. And if you're coming off your rookie deal, you do what you do. You leverage it however you want to make it, you know. So, and this is a Baker Mayfield issue. Baker Mayfield caused this issue on himself. No one else. This is what Baker Mayfield decided to do. He can't tell those people he feels disrespected going into his 11th season when they offered him a pretty fair market deal, per the article. He gonna give the general manager a deadline for when they can give him some money. Think about that. Do you see how that sounds? I'm gonna give y'all a deadline for when y'all should pay me. And if we don't make a deal by that deadline, I don't want your money. You understand? See how? Think about the psychological in that part. Where is the logics in that? Mayfield's idea of what average per year should be, it can't make sense. Like I said, what makes a quarterback a franchise quarterback? The question I proposed to everyone in the beginning of this segment. Let me know what defines a franchise quarterback. I thought a franchise quarterback meant an elite quarterback who the team has long-term plans for, right? Got to be elite first. And then we plan on having you around for a decade or so at least, I guess, right? I just don't think the Buccaneers are super excited about signing Mayfield. Yes, they need him around for 1 or 2 more seasons, maybe even 3. But as soon as they are able to find a true franchise passer, they won't hesitate to replace Baker Mayfield, in my opinion. Like I said, Tom Brady has came through there and made a huge difference on how everyone in that organization view things. Now, the best thing going for Baker Mayfield at this point is the lack of quality quarterbacks in the NFL draft. But hell, he'll mess around and get traded for a guy like Arch Manning, the golden boy, the way he is carrying on. Because nobody is safe when it comes to Arch Manning when he declares for the NFL draft. For real. So we'll see how that goes with with Baker Mayfield. I feel like they are going to get a contract deal done. This makes no sense for Baker Mayfield to be this stubborn and hold off as long as he's holding off and things like that. But we'll see how that go, man. How we doing in the chat? Do we feel like Baker Mayfield is making the right decision and demanding certain things at the caliber player he is at this point in his career? Y'all let me know in the chat. I don't know. I don't think Baker Mayfield should be making these demands at this point, right? He should be handling, being a professional and negotiating accordingly and getting the deal done. I don't think it's that hard.